Welcome, everyone. So glad you can be with us tonight. My name is Joan Spurl. I am with the Literacy Cooperative. I'm the director of Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. Dolly relies on local program partners to make the program available, raise the money for it, and make it available in the community, and then promote enrollment and manage enrollment. And we are thrilled to be able to do that here in Cuyahoga County. And the program is available now to every child under 5 in Ohio to get free books. So if you are not an Imagination Library family and you found out about this some other way, and you have a child under the age of 5, we really want you to get them enrolled. It's for everyone. That's how Dolly designed the program. And we are happy to be able to, in addition to the books that we're mailing to children, to offer programs like this. I met Mark Shankman, who you're going to hear from in a little minute, at a Connecting for Kids resource fair, and he will tell you more about them. And but Epicenter offered to do this program, and we know that many of you are hungry for information to help with things like mastering meltdowns. So we are really happy to have them here tonight. Just a couple housekeeping things. You can use the chat if you want to, make little remarks, and then we have the Q&A section if you want to put questions in. Some of you filled out a survey, a pre-survey for them that we had sent out to registrants, just in case you had specific issues what you wanted to address. So we shared that with them, and they can refer to that. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go off screen and mute myself and let Mark take over from here, and then Marnie, and then we will I'll help with Q&A as needed, and sometimes I insert myself and add a comment because I am a former kindergarten teacher, preschool teacher, and a mother of a 19-year-old, but it's more the teaching that sometimes I, as an early childhood educator, like to say something. So we'll see. Anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Joan. Appreciate it. And thank you all for being here. My name is Mark Shankman. I'm the Director of Business Development here at Epicenter ABA Therapy. I'm also the husband of our founder and CEO, Marnie Katz, right here, who is the founder and CEO and a behavior expert that's going to be sharing all of her expertise with us this evening. Marnie's been studying and working in the field of behavior analysis for over a decade. And in California, in Illinois, and when Ohio finally mandated insurance to cover applied behavior analysis therapy, or ABA as we call it, she said, let's move back to Cleveland, where we both grew up, and help as many kiddos in this area as possible in our own hometown. So I just want to set the stage here real quick and clarify that this parent training is for any and all parents. I'm, aside from being married to her, I am just a regular guy with kids, and everything I've learned about being a parent, being patient, developing healthy relationships with our kids, and modeling healthy relationships for our kids, I learned from Marnie over here. So, and better yet, a lot of what I've learned, it was from attending other trainings that she has led as an attendee. So I believe that you'll find this immensely helpful, whether you're joining us live now or later on. That said, as your child goes through milestones and goes through behaviors, and every day is new, there's always going to be something going on. Please do not hesitate to give us a shout to chat with one of our behavior experts for consultation services. We do one-on-ones. We do group sessions, so you can kind of get a barometer for, is this, and oh yeah, you go through that too, things like that. So feel free to reach out to us, because we are available to consult with you at every stage, at every behavior, and every milestone. So without further ado, please, I'm going to step off camera and hand it over to Marnie.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to talk about mastering meltdowns. So a lot of this presentation is understanding why behaviors happen. Why do these behaviors happen? And just first understanding that, so that you can then go ahead and implement some of the tools that I'm going to also share with you today. And Mark did a really great job explaining my background, but I'm a behavior analyst, also a behavior expert. I am a board certified behavior analyst, and I am also a mom, and I decided to put next to my credentials mom because I think it's a very important title. And just wanted to make sure I share that, I think it's important that you don't have to be a mom to be a behavior analyst, but it's a big part of me and who I am. And I do find a lot of value in utilizing these tools of ABA in my daily life. And like Mark said, I've modeled a lot of things. He's come a long way as well, and just implementing applied behavior analysis within our lives. And it's been very helpful. And we realized the need and to share this with everyone in the community to be able to share it with everyone. All right. So just a little bit about Epicenter. Our mission is to provide treatment for children, not just with autism, but just to provide treatment for everyone in ABA, in the community. Hey, Mark. And some of the program that we're doing is we're doing building resilience as a caregiver, effective communication with your child, power struggles, who's in control, boundary setting, and how to say no, as well as transitions in the community. So some of these are additional parent trainings that we're providing to the community, and we just wanted to share a little bit of the meltdowns are just a piece of this big puzzle. And as a parent, there's so many. Parenting is so hard. It's hard enough just to try to navigate parenthood. And as a mom myself and a behavior analyst, I have a difficult time. And so it's not easy even having the credentials that I have and having the experience I have. And I'm learning every day. We learn as our children develop. And it's important to know that don't make yourself feel bad about, the choices that you're making in the moment. And, being here today is a big step too, is showing that you're committed to doing something new and trying something that's going to help you be a better parent. And we're here to help you too. Some of our services at Epicenter, we provide services to ages 0 to 12 is a range of who we see, but we also go all the way up to 21. So we work with all ages and stages of development, and we're focusing today on parent training, but we also do individual consultation, social skills groups, school-based ABA, teacher training, and classroom management. So let's just jump in. Let's jump into everything. So understanding behavior. So why is this happening? We want to look at challenging behaviors. Those can be, they can affect your relationship with your kiddo. They can affect relationships with peers, with siblings, with your other family members, with cousins, and they can really restrict your ability to join your family unit, join your culture and your community. And so we really want to tackle any challenging behaviors that are getting in the way of learning new skills, of being a part of your community. Desirable behaviors. Those are behaviors we want to see. So those can be building skills, leads to socially appropriate behaviors. They lead to building functional life skills and living skills. We want to think of desirable behaviors as skills. So skills that might be not yet learned from our little kiddos or even our teenagers. Sometimes there's new skills, life skills that we want to teach them, and those are the desirable behaviors. There are different levels of severity within behavior. There's disruptive, dangerous, and very dangerous. Disruptive is where we're going to focus our energy on right now. We're going to think about tantrums and meltdowns as disruptive. They can move to dangerous or very dangerous. And if they move to dangerous, we're looking at behaviors like hitting, biting, kicking, especially around others like siblings or peers or in the school, other people around you. And then we move to very dangerous. Very dangerous would be things like head banging or anything that could draw blood, or biting forcefully, which could draw blood, or using items as a weapon. So that's when it moves to very dangerous. If you're seeing that behaviors are moving the levels of severity consistently from disruptive to dangerous very often, do not feel like you have to be alone in this and that you're just trying to figure it out and that you're on your own. We do have a link in the QR code. Please reach out to us. Please, even if you're not in the area, reach out to us. We'll provide you some resources that you can, in what direction you can go in, fill out the inquiry, and we will help support you in any way we can. We also have a Facebook group that will be live that you can ask additional questions, and we're happy to refer and give support in that area. But do not feel like you're alone in this if you're finding that things are moving from to dangerous very often and very dangerous. So now the ABCs of behavior. So we have antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. And we're going to go into these. The antecedent is what happens before the behavior. So that's right before the behavior. And then we have the behavior in the middle. Today we're going to focus on tantrums and meltdowns. But I want to say that behavior doesn't have to necessarily be a challenging behavior. It could also be a skill we want to see. So something like following directions, or it could be brushing your teeth. So those are also a behavior, and they also have an antecedent and then a consequence at the end. What happens immediately after that behavior? So with these antecedents and consequences of the behavior, the ABCs, we want to keep in mind the importance of why is this happening? You have the antecedent, the behavior, and the consequence. What happens before and what happens after the behavior. So now, why is it happening? What are the functions of behavior? Functions of behavior are going to be so super important because everything we do as humans, there's a function and a reason why. So these 4 things are going to help you understand why any behavior is happening. It's even us as adults. We have functions and all these apply. So I always think of it as take a seat. So the reason why I like take a seat is because it reminds me of take a minute. Just take a minute to think about this and think about what is the function, what's happening, why is this happening? So we have seat, sensory, escape, attention, and tangible. So seat, take a seat. So when you're in these behaviors and meltdowns, some of these things that we're going to go over now, just remember, take a seat. It's okay to take a minute and think, is it sensory, escape, attention, or tangible? All right, so let's go into them. Sensory. So sensory, I'm not going to go too far into, but I do want to say that it is an important function to understand, and it's a person behaves a certain way because it feels good. We all have sensory needs. We all have sensory needs that we do naturally. So one of the things I tend to do is if I had a pen in my hand, I would do that clicking. It's super annoying, probably in class, but I would do that clicking sound where you click on the pen. And so that just feels good. It's, that clicking is automatically reinforcing to me. And helps me regulate. So that's something that feels good. Some people or kids like to go on a swing or a swing set, and it just feels good. And that feeling feels good. So sensory is absolutely something to consider in the functions. And if you feel like sensory is getting in the way of your child learning new skills, or getting in the way of moving past having constant meltdowns, and you feel like the function is the sensory, then I do suggest reaching out to your primary care physician, asking to set up with an OT, occupational therapist, and they can do a sensory assessment. Behavior analysts can also support in sensory support, and if that's a function, but I would go to first the primary care physician and see what's going on as far as sensory, and what are those sensory items that your child needs. Then we have escape. So escape is a person behaves a certain way because they want to remove themselves from an undesirable person, an undesirable task, an item, or a situation. So the thing to remember is that with escape, if it can become more dangerous if the child is eloping, so escaping out of out of your house, out of the school, or into a dangerous area. So elopement is one that I do like to bring up because it can become a more dangerous behavior when that's involved. But as far as escape goes, it's something to consider. Is your child trying to get out of something, a task, a bunch of demands being placed? Are they trying to get out of that one demand being placed of brushing your teeth? I know my daughter doesn't always love to do that. But thinking about it as like, okay, are they trying to escape this task or this person or in their environment? Attention. So attention is a person behaves a certain way because it provides a reaction from another person. It could be a sibling, it could be a parent, it could be a teacher, it could be a neighbor, it could be a grandparent. So they're seeking out that attention. Tangible. So a person behaves the way they do because they want access to something. So it could be a food item, it could be a toy, it could be being swung up in the air, and that's more of an activity. So thinking about the different things that they're seeking, and is that a tangible? Is it something that they can get or do? So now remember, sensory, take a seat. Sensory, escape, attention, and tangible. Those are the functions of all behavior. Even our own behavior, there's always a function of why we do something. And it's the history of doing those behaviors that start to become a pattern for us or for our children. Reinforcement. All right, so we're going to talk about reinforcement. Reinforcement is something that we say, do, or give that causes the behavior to increase in the future. So remember, the behavior is going to increase in the future. And the behavior does not have to be just a challenging behavior like the meltdowns. We are going to focus on the meltdowns, but I do want to remind you that there's also behaviors that are skills. So if the skill is increasing and your child is learning a skill, that means that they're being reinforced by something. And we do want to keep that reinforcement up because that's the skill we want to see in the future. So we want to decrease this challenging behavior of meltdowns and increase a skill that we want to see more of. So remembering this reinforcer and what is in reinforcement is in place, we want to stick to that and keep that going. All right, reinforcement versus bribery. This is when we get so much. We hear, well, I don't want to bribe my child, or I want to figure out a reinforcer, but they think that's bribery. So here's the difference. Reinforcement is setting up your child for success. So you're figuring out ahead of time, there isn't a challenging behavior happening. You're setting up ahead of time as an antecedent before the behavior, what it is that your child's going to be most motivated by, and how do I set that in place as the expectation so that we don't even get into that behavior, but we're setting it up. Maybe the behavior happened, but that expectation has been set ahead of time. Bribery is when you're in that behavior, that meltdown, and then you add on that reinforcer. So I'll give an example, and this is more of like a reactive protocol or a reactive item that adding on a reinforcer after the meltdown's happening. So say we just had dinner, we're on our way to the park, and we're gonna spend like 20 minutes at the park, and we start playing, having a good time. And then I tell my kiddo, hey, we got to go home. We got to get in our PJs. We got to get bath going. We got to get in our PJs, and we have to head home. And then my child immediately drops to the floor, starts crying, kicking and screaming. And I say, if you leave right now, we can eat ice cream at home. That's a bribe because the meltdown has happened. I haven't set up that expectation that they're going to get ice cream, and now I'm adding it to entice them to leave. And that's when it becomes a bribe. And then reinforcement would be, we finish dinner, we're going to the park, and on the way to the park, I say, hey, we're gonna have 15 minutes at the park, and then after, if you walk nicely, and not drop to the floor and fall and not cry or whine, we can then have ice cream when we get home. So now I'm setting up the expectations ahead of time, like this is what we're going to do, and this is what your reinforcer is going to be for following through on what I'm going home after the park. So I might give like a 5-minute warning too, again, hey, 5 more minutes. And then remember, we're going to walk nicely. We're not going to drop to the floor. We're going to not cry and whine, and we're going to walk home. And if we do that, then we get ice cream. So that would be a reinforcer. All right. So when you're thinking about the reinforcer versus bribery, when you start moving into bribery, that can turn into a behavior trap. So we're going to talk a little bit about how behavior traps happen. So behavior traps are when you are reinforcing behaviors to get them to stop immediately, but it actually causes that behavior to continue in the future. So it's like this vicious cycle where you're providing that reinforcer to get it to stop. And you can see how the bribery can lead to that behavior trap, because I'm going to give that the behavior, the challenging behavior meltdowns is happening, and I'm going to reinforce that behavior by giving that because I need it to stop. But then what happens next time at the park when we do the same thing, or what happens next time at, a different playground, or with with grandparents at the playground? It's going to continue in different places, different locations, and with different people. So here is an example of a behavior trap and how it works with both the child, your kiddo, and with you as a parent. So again, we're going to look at the ABCs, the antecedent, what happens before the behavior, and the consequence, what happens immediately after that behavior. And then we're going to focus on what is your kiddo's ABCs, and then what are my ABCs as a parent. So we have your kiddo is in a playroom and sees a tablet, and it's out of reach and sees it. And then that is the antecedent. So I see that tablet, and then your kiddo starts dropping on the floor, kicking and screaming and throwing things, toys everywhere, and having a tantrum saying, I want the tablet. That's the behavior. And now the consequence is I hand over the tablet to my kiddo, and then my kiddo stops crying. So, but my child's ABCs is I see a tablet, I have a tantrum or a meltdown, and then my mom or dad give me my tablet. Now we go into the parents' behaviors. Antecedent, the behavior, the consequence. The antecedent, my kid is having a meltdown and tantrum, and we have so much anxiety with this. And there's a whole resilience training we have too that you can if you click on the link on the QR code, you could always request it for more information on this. But I know for myself, even as a behavior analyst, I have lots of anxieties of when my child cries and whines. So there's so much at play there when this is happening. And so we're seeing that the antecedent, obviously internally, there's a lot going on. And I want it to stop. And then I just hand over the tablet. Here you go. Here's the tablet. Whew. Consequence. The behavior stops. Yes, we did it. It stopped. So it does. It stops right away. This is great. We did it. The problem is that cycle just continues. It continues and continues. And so your child then learns, I tantrum, and I cry to get that tablet. And the problem with that is that if that behavior continues, it becomes over time in history, it starts to become this learned behavior that to get a tablet, I throw a tantrum. So, okay, let's try this with getting a cookie. Let's try this with getting, wearing not wearing shoes to school. Let's try this with grandma. Let's try this with my teachers. So then it starts transitioning to other places. And that's when they're generalizing that same, how do I access something to get access to other things in other environments and with other people. All right. So now we're going to look at triggers. So triggers are, again, what happens before a behavior occurs. So what I will have you think about, and I would love for you to think about, as of course, we're going to have millions of tantrums and meltdowns in our future. I mean, I hope not, but I know with myself that with my kiddos, I'm sure I'm going to have a lot more to come. But when I think about them and they happen, I want you to afterwards go back and think through these triggers and what could be happening and what could, if there's any consistency in repetitiveness in these trigger and these different examples I'm about to give you, to just start being more aware of what's happening in your environment. So triggers are what is going to lead your child to start escalating. So this could be, is it a certain location that these meltdowns are happening? Is it certain demands being placed before you start seeing meltdowns? Is there a lack of demands? There's no demands happening. Are there certain people? Is a sibling there? Is a neighbor there? Is a friend there? Is it a parent that's in there? Is it certain sounds in the environment? Is music on? Is the TV on? Is a toy going on and off in the environment? Are there kids playing outside in the playground? Different facial expressions. Sometimes you might not realize your facial expressions and what they look like, and maybe asking another person to observe you and see, is there something that my face is doing that might be triggering my child to escalate? So asking asking another person in the environment, if there is another person in the environment, if they're noticing something, but just being more mindful of different things. Or is there a sibling having a different facial expression that is triggering another child to have that meltdown? So just thinking through those things in the environment. Saying no it could be a trigger. There's so many different types of triggers. So just looking back and trying to debrief and analyze what that could be. So next is signs of escalations. So I'm going to play a video. This is my little kiddo. And I think she's 2.5 or something. So I'm going to talk through the signs of escalation. This one is very mild, but it still gives a good representation of me waiting her out, as well as some of the escalations which could have gone further throughout.
I want coconut. I want coconut. I want coconut.
Okay, you can dream about Cocomelon.
No, I don't want
So
to.
she's stomping
I don't want
and crying and whining. Well, more whining,
to.
little cry.
What is that?
We bought it
I'm
for
pleasing the
Okay.
man.
me. It's on this.
Growing.
It says nothing.
Yeah.
Oh man. Who has a cute tushy butt?
Trying to redirect.
Okay, well first we gotta get in the car.
Okay.
Do you need a diaper change before we go?
No.
So obviously I did a lot of waiting in between, and I tried to place some demands to see if I can get her to come back and not continue to escalate. But their escalation can get worse, and it's happened to me way worse than this. And there's so many different levels. But what I like to do is kind of look back up for my child's gonna be completely different than someone else's child. So when you're looking at your own child, seeing like, what are those different ways that my child escalates and escalates? Is it they start with a facial expression that's what their first sign of escalation, and then they move to stomping, and then they move to crying, and then they drop to the floor and start throwing and kicking and having a full-on meltdown. So when you're going back and thinking through from the meltdown, can I work my way back and see what those signs of escalation are? Because those are going to be helpful in how can I de-escalate this before it reaches the highest peak. And that's something that you just have to start thinking through it in the moment now that you can think through the different levels, or maybe you can think of it right now, but working your way back and then working your way back also helps you understand the triggers. So from working my way back, okay, now what happened before that facial expression happened? Did I place a demand? Did I say something? Did I say no? Did I take something away? Was there another sibling in the room? Like thinking of the scene and putting the pieces together from there helps you make changes in the environment and changes for your child to de-escalate them out of that full-on tantrum. All right, so now let's build your cool toolkit. We're going to start with proactive strategies. So these are things that are the antecedent before the behavior that you want to try before that meltdown happens. Okay, so staying neutral is so hard. It's harder than you think, especially for your own child. But it's very important to be mindful of your own facial expressions and breathing through the moment. And even when you're frustrated and there's so much going on, we have so much to do. We have dinner to get ready. We have to make sure that they get in bed on time. We want to have our own time for a minute of the day. There's might be work still to do. There might be laundry still to do. There's so much on our plates at all time, and there's so much pressure. So it does build up. And, breathing through the moment with your child too helps. But when you're presenting things to your child, just staying more neutral and trying to stay as neutral as possible. And it can be frustrating, especially if kiddos push your buttons. So, which they all love to do. But yeah, staying neutral is very important before any meltdown happens, and even during escalation, staying neutral. It's very difficult, but it's a good skill to practice. All right, I'm going to show another video. This one is for choosing your language wisely. So I'm going to play it and then we'll talk a little bit about it.
You're gonna behave.
No.
Then we can't have chocolate milk. All right, let me ask you again. Are you gonna behave?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're gonna be a good girl,
Yeah.
but you're not gonna behave?
No.
Okay, so we should definitely get you a treat. Should we get you a treat?
Mhm.
Do you get treats for good behavior?
No.
Bad behavior?
No.
What do you get treats for?
Or pooping in the potty.
Oh, okay. Well, are you gonna behave?
No.
Okay, well, I guess we'll have to talk about whether or not we're gonna get you some milkies.
I do.
We have to behave.
All right, so choosing your language wisely. So with this, some parents, I know Mark is a very sarcastic person, and that's a part of who he is. So if you're sarcastic and you have that banter with your kids and you want that a part of your culture, which is so important for us, to continue the sarcasm and teach it, but sarcasm and some of those intonations can be confusing for little kiddos. And it's important to understand that there's a lot that they're learning, and some of the words like behave, good, bad, misbehave, can be confusing because what does that mean? What does it mean? And you can tell Charlie was confused by, well, what does behave mean? She was trying to figure it out, and you can see her trying to figure this out, like how I'm not behave, I am behave, and you can see her trying to figure out what's going on with it. So it's important to set the expectations, be clear and concise, and be mindful of sarcasm. If you're going to use sarcasm, or if you're going to utilize that in your daily life, just make sure you also explain what that means and try to break it down even further. Kiddos, they're learning so much information all at the same time. What's good and bad in what's behave and misbehave in school is going to be very different than, or daycare, and then very different at home. It's going to be very different at grandma's house. It's going to be very different in the grocery store. It's going to be very different in the car or in a restaurant. So they're learning so much all at the same time. It's so important that here are my expectations. Here's what we're trying to, here's how you get certain things, and here's what I expect of you. Choose like one or two or three things and explain it that way so that they can understand, okay, when we go to the grocery store, I expect you to, hold my list for the grocery and pick out some items that are on our list. And then after that, we can pick out one thing that you want to pick out. So kind of just like setting those expectations of what you expect out of them, and you can pair those things with behave or misbehave, or the different words that you might be using, or if it is sarcasm, just explaining what you mean as well, and then start pairing those things. And then you can start using it naturally in language once they understand that sarcasm and it makes sense. And then being careful of those yes and no questions, unless you are okay with the answer being no, like, can you put on your shoes? Nope. So like, if you're not ready for the no, then be careful of the yes and no questions. All right. Giving choices. I love this one. So as much as you can, give choices to your kiddo. it gives them that sense of autonomy and sense of control that they don't always feel like they have when their schedule and where they're supposed to go and where they're supposed to be is determined by someone else at all the time. And some of the times they have no idea what day it is or where they're supposed to go that day. And that can build anxiety, and that can build a lot of different that sense of lack of control, which also can lead to some of these meltdowns and tantrums because you don't have a sense of where things are going. So giving the choices, whether it be giving choices of what to wear in the morning or giving choices of which water bottle to choose from, or which food item is in their lunchbox, or which activity they get to go to after school. So there's so many different ways to provide choices, and as much as you can provide those choices so they can feel that sense of control and also feel independent and start learning how to be independent. We don't always love their choices of a snow hat with a princess dress and rain boots, but it's a choice they made, and we're gonna go with it. All right, so then we have first then language. This one's really great to use. It's very concise and clear. You're saying first do this and then this, and it's very helpful to have that reinforcer as the then, and provide what do you want from them to do. First clean up, then Spider-Man show. So kind of just giving more of that. We get our reinforcer. And this is also extremely helpful when you have a lot of meltdowns and tantrums, is providing more of this, more first thens, to get more of that compliance, to build up the compliance, having those establish what they really like, what are they most motivated by, and how can I provide that first do this, then this method. With this in mind, I do hear a lot, well, I don't want everything to be a reinforcer. They don't have to, why do they always have to work for a reinforcer? So just think about it as, us as adults, we've learned to be reinforced by something. We've had plenty of years and history of being reinforced in some way or form, whether, and so those are more naturally occurring reinforcers. We learn that we have to work a couple weeks before we get paid. We've learned that, we have to establish, a certain period of time. That period of time can be lengthened because we understand what to expect. But our kids are learning this for the first time. They're learning, and waiting is hard. It's a hard skill to have. It's a skill that needs to be learned. So having that immediacy first then, and having that reinforcer there, that motivator that's going to get them there, they're going to then learn that skill faster. And then you can start spreading it out. There's lots of other, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but visual schedules and token systems with stars and charts that you can also incorporate to lengthen that time if it feels like it's hard to lengthen. But it's really important that we teach these skills. We teach them how to be reinforced by things and how to lengthen that time. But we also, in order to get out of those meltdowns, it's important prior to set them up for success, provide the first then, give them some of that understanding of what they're being motivated to do. And we could also then move it into some socially appropriate reinforcers as well. So maybe it starts off as some of those items or toys that they really want, and then it moves into some more socially appropriate, naturally occurring reinforcers. Practice. So practicing, model everything you can for your kiddo, how to do certain skills. If there's a skill that they're still learning, a communication skill, teach them it, model it, talk about it, model the language for them. We have a whole effective communication training as well that, if you click on our QR code and reach out and if you have interest in it. But practicing communication and practicing different skills is so important so that your kid understands, what does this look like? How do I do this in real life? And then visual supports are very helpful as a proactive strategy as well. Calendars, having even in the first then, some kiddos it's helpful to have some type of icon that shows first this, then this. But also timers can be effective. Just be mindful with timers, because I know, for example, my kiddo timers in the morning, or if it's a timer before bath time, is totally fine. everything works out well. But when there's a timer before bed, she started getting very anxious. And so just be mindful if you're finding anxiety over timers, maybe trial it a couple times. And if you're noticing high anxiety over it or perseverating on the timers, it might not be the most effective strategy to use for your kid, or maybe try it in a different time or a different place, or maybe a different age of development. Maybe there's a different time to use it. But we did find that, they'd be worried about like, well, when's the timer going to go off? And just like that constant questions about the timer. And so it turned out to just not work for before bed, but it did work before a bath time, or, hey, you have 5 more minutes before going to the bath of playing with your toys, and then we're going to go up to bath. So that worked, and there wasn't any perseveration or anxiety. So just be mindful if that feels like there's too much anxiety behind it. It doesn't have to be the tool that you use. Consequences. All right, so this is after the behavior, or during the meltdown. So behavior specific praise. I also like to use this one when there's no escalation, when there's no meltdown. So in your natural environment, when you're hanging out with your kid and you're seeing them ask nicely for a glass of milk, or asking or taking a turn with their sibling, I like to say, oh, I really like the way you took turns with him. Talking about it and what the behavior is that you want to see then naturally reinforces your child to want to do it more. And so kind of finding those opportunities and saying them out loud is very helpful. And this is the same thing in escalation. So say your child's starting this escalation path, and there's a break in it where maybe they put down a piece of paper, but it's like putting down really nicely on the table, just like gently. Oh, I really like the way you put down that piece of paper. That was really nice. I really like that. So even if you're in this meltdown, you're addressing the behaviors you want to see. Or, oh, they're stomping their feet and on the ground, and then all of a sudden they feel like they're de-escalating a little bit, and they take on a typical just step. Oh, I really like that step. That was such a nice step. And it was so quiet. So kind of talking through what are the behaviors I want to see and trying to shape it back down out of escalation. Sometimes it re-escalates. So if you find that your verbalizations are re-escalating, then maybe you take a step back and just wait for a minute. Proactive and reactive, or antecedent consequence, stay neutral. It's a big one, breathe through the moment. It's very hard again, especially in the moment when you're in this escalation moment and in the meltdowns. There's so much anxiety as a parent that you're going through, trying to do the right thing. You're trying to redirect maybe another sibling away from the area. Maybe there's a bunch of parents looking at you, and that also adds to it. So just remember that your child's not attacking you personally, and that they're not doing it to be mean. So just try not to be offended by it, and remember your functions. Why is my child doing it? Take a seat. So this again, like take a breath, take a seat. Sensory, escape, attention, and tangible. Remember those functions. There's a reason why they're doing this. So now let's take a breath and let's work through it. And sometimes when you take a breath, it also helps model and they take a breath. And so just take a minute. Don't feel like you have to solve this right this second. It's okay. We're going to figure this out. And then if you're finding that you yourself are getting so worked up or anxious, either tap out with another person, or don't feel bad reaching out. We're here to help. We're here to help you. There's so many resources. We have lots of behavior specialists that can help work through these things. If you're finding that you're in this over and over again, we have additional caregiver trainings that's like building resilience, and it's really important to take care of yourself. Personal boundaries, respecting your kiddo's space, keeping other kids safe in the environment as well. So if you need to move another child, always do that. Keeping people safe, moving them to a space that's safe if you have to, is always important as well during de-escalation and trying to de-escalate. Model breathing. I love this one. I find it important, again, to do this out of escalation. So practicing things out of when your child's not in escalation, just on a regular basis. One of the things that I did was at nighttime, we would practice blowing balloons. And so we would take, just to try to de-escalate from the day. So we would take a big breath at night, and I would say, okay, let's blow a balloon. Do you want to blow a green balloon or a blue balloon? Again, giving choices. And we would blow a big green balloon. Okay. Blow it bigger, 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 bigger. And we would do that several times, and it just helped like bring her back down. And I would do that for different things. You could do, let's blow an animal balloon. Which animal do you want to blow? Cat or a dog? And then you blow them in the air. Oh, look at them. They're passing the airplane. So you can make it fun, and they're practicing breathing. And then when they're in that escalated moment, you're then able to bring in a strategy like this during escalation where they already had this skill and they understand it. And then, because no one learns in escalation. No child, no adult, we don't learn in escalations. It's not the time to teach. It's the time to do something you already know how to do. So if you've already learned how to practice this breathing, you can then do it yourself with them in that moment. And it's then a tool that you can use and helps bring them back down. It's really important to practice things and skills that you want outside of escalation. All right. And then remember, when you start to see de-escalation, go back into those proactive toolkits. So go back into providing the expectations, like what are the expectations of me? What's my reinforcer? What am I motivated by? And going back through those all over again to help set your child up for success. And one of the last things is not to engage in a power struggle. So we have a whole training on power struggles. I could talk for a long time about power struggles, have plenty of them myself. My husband's had plenty of them. And, it's just something, again, take a seat, sensory, escape, attention, and tangible. Take a minute. What is the function here? What is it that they're seeking? And then also, what do I want? What is the point of what I want from my child right now? So I'm presenting something. So here's an example. Before I go into this example, say mealtime. We have, I say to my kid, I eat 5 strawberries and then we can be all done. So then my kiddo goes, I'm going to eat 5 bites of applesauce. So and in that moment, I could either pick up that rope and say, no, I said 5 strawberries. Or I can say, well, wait a second. What is it that I wanted them to do? I want her to eat. So does it really matter if it's 5 strawberries or 5 bites of applesauce? No, I mean, she's seeking out that control, that sense of autonomy. And it's at the end of the day, it doesn't matter in that moment. So fine. Sounds great. 5 bites of applesauce. Go for it. So in this moment, we were at a rock climbing gym class, and I was right before lunch. We had to get down the stairs. Then other students were trying to go up the stairs for their class, and I wanted her to go to the bathroom before we left because I didn't want her, because she was still potty training, and I didn't want her to pee in the car. I also knew that we had to get home for lunch, and I wanted her to get down for nap. I know my other kiddo was also the same thing, where was at home with Mark, my husband, and I wanted to make sure they were all set and everything was good there. And there's a lot of people in this environment. So, I asking her to come down the stairs, and there's starting to become some of that refusal and just kind of hanging out and doing a little dance moves, and there's people waiting. So like my own anxieties would start, like, oh man, all these people are looking at me. They're waiting for their class. They can't get into this class because my girl is just dancing on the stairs. And then if she has a tantrum and I do pick up this rope and she has this tantrum, she's going to drop on these stairs and she's going to, I don't know, roll down the stairs. So there's just so much of our own stuff that's going on too. And we're trying to make sure we get all of the things in order. But I just took a minute and I said, all right, does this matter if we take 5 more minutes for her to dance down the stairs? As long as we're going down the stairs? No, it doesn't. And you know what? She had a great time going down the stairs. It took 10 minutes extra. I put a picture of this woman just kind of rolling her eyes because that's how I felt. But, she had a good time. No one fought, and we weren't in that back and forth arguing, and she came down the stairs. She made her way down the stairs. So she did it her own way. But you know, that's where choosing not to pick up the rope and the power and not to engage in that power struggle can just kind of take a minute and realize, well, what is the point? I want her down the stairs. We're going to get down the stairs. We're going to get to the bathroom. It's okay. You know, everyone can wait. All right. So then common challenges, just some things to think about as we're wrapping up. Some of the things, if you're feeling overstimulated as a parent, if you're not sure what to say, if you're finding it difficult to understand who's in charge. I know my daughter likes to say that she's in charge pretty often. So, you know, if that becomes a reoccurring thing, saying no becomes very difficult, or leaving fun activities or transitions are hard. Those are all trainings that we provide in addition to this Meltdowns training. And there's so much to learn and so much to provide to the community, and we just want to make sure that you know that it's out there and that you're not alone. We all go through it. Even as a behavior analyst, I'm going through it all the time, and it's hard. It can be hard. And we even do grandparent trainings, because I know sometimes grandparents are not on the same page as us, and so there's also additional resources for that as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Marnie. And just a couple of thoughts. One is, well, as she said earlier, every child's different. So every family is different. And for some of you, some of this, you might not need to do reinforcement for certain things. You know, some things might come easily, but then suddenly you might hit a bump. Which was my own experience with our son. When we were talking before we started, I said he didn't have many meltdowns. I was lucky. He didn't. However, there were the skills that we needed to teach, you know, to get through. We needed to use reinforcement to make something a habit. And that was around bedtime at one point, at a couple different points in his early childhood. I'm a former kindergarten and preschool teacher, and as much as possible, I wanted children to be intrinsically motivated to behave and do the right things. And a lot of my training was not around rewards and reinforcement. However, there are instances when you just have to do it. But I totally, as a teacher, did need to do the positive reinforcement. And especially with different children. A lot of what Marnie said, it brought back memories, as well as seeking help when needed. You know, you can always talk to your pediatrician about what's happening. Marnie mentioned the need sometimes for an occupational therapy consult if you see sensory issues. I absolutely had that happen with students of mine. You know, one student where he just was having resisting doing writing in the classroom, and he would have tantrums and meltdowns, and his parents wondered if it was this or if it was that. And I said, you know, I would take him. My hunch is that you should look into seeing an occupational therapist or having that kind of an evaluation. And sure enough, they did, and that took care of the issue. So I just wanted to also remind folks that we have, and different things work for different people too. Different people find different toolkits work. So wanted to remind folks that we have recordings of some related presentations. And sometimes you have to hear things different ways. Sometimes it's the same thing presented by different presenters in slightly different ways. It's the same idea or message, but we have a behavior chat and a behavior toolkit that was from Connecting for Kids, which is how I connected to Marnie and Mark. And then we had one from Bright Beginnings, Positive Discipline to Promote Positive Behavior. It's got some of the same ideas. And then Joan Morgenstern from Senders Pediatrics did one on making sense of children's emotions that I just thought was brilliant. So all of these together, like, you know, you can be well equipped with other things that you can access to at different times if you need your own reinforcement.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I know we already got one question in the and we're going to do Q&A. And I know for some people you might have to sign off because we've been on for an hour, but I'm hoping you found it helpful. And I think my colleague was going to put a survey in the chat, a survey link. So if some of you, before you leave, if you're willing to do complete the survey, that's helpful to us. And yeah, oh, and there's a question in the chat, and then there's Q&A. Okay, thank you, Grace. So first, someone asked, this is simple, will these slides be available later? I don't know that we were going to provide the slides. It's up to you, Marnie, but we did record this. So, we could potentially provide slides if you wanted to, the registrants, but it's up to you. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, we can, I mean, the video is up, but if you want, you could always inquire and we can give you some more information.
Okay. And then I wanted to go back because we had one earlier. My child just turned 1 and I am starting to recognize certain behaviors. For example, crying and screaming at the baby gate when I walk out of the playroom to go to another room for a few moments. Is there anything I can do now at a younger age? And I'll let you answer, but I may say something too.
No, I love it. I'd love for you to say something too. That's so funny because that's literally happening to me and my youngest right now. So it's like happening in the moment. But yeah, I think you can definitely start to build some skills of some independent play skills. So setting up the environment before you leave the area with some toys that are age appropriate for your child, and I would start doing it with your child first. So like, here's how you play with this toy. Don't do too many toys because then it gets overwhelming, but I would choose 1 or 2, maybe in 2 different areas, but first start by teaching how to use those toys. And then after that, you can set them up with that toy, leave the room, and it buys you it buys you a little bit of time. And then you just start building that endurance up. You build to more toys or more items that they can get into and feel confident in that skill that they're learning. And that should minimize the whining. What's happening is, like, when I'm thinking take a seat, sensory escape, attention, and tangible, when I hear that, just in my own experience with my little kiddo, it tends to be attention. They're seeking out your attention. So let's give them a skill that, let's play with them. Let's satiate their attention with you and play with them, and then teach that skill playing with other things so that what you can take a minute for yourself because you need it, and you maybe needed to cook dinner, or you need to do something just else that you might need to get done for the day. So that could build up over time.
Yeah, and I would just add on top of that, you're using language to talk about what is happening and what's going to happen, and then what happened. So so she was talking about, and I didn't even memorize antecedent, but what, you want to reinforce the child is developing attachment, and sometimes they're feeling they want to be reassured that you're coming back, that you're going to be nearby. So you want to say, here's this, you can play with this. Mommy needs to go, mommy or daddy needs to go do this for a moment. I'm going to be right back. And then when you come back, see, mommy came back. Mommy always comes back. So reinforce it with the language, tell them what's going to be happening, what you're doing, what's going to be happening, reassure them. Because they need that. They can't read your mind, right? You want them to feel secure in their attachment to you, and then, but separation can be hard. And believe me, I went through it with my child. It was extremely, that was challenging now that I think of all these things. Anyway, it brings back memories.
Yeah, and you're building language, like everything you just said, perfect. I loved it because you also are bringing language into learning how language works, and learning how to engage in that back and forth, and being able to eventually, the kiddo might not be speaking yet, but having that engagement is important. And it also feels like a lot of receptive skills are already there. They're learning, hearing everything and taking it in. So you're giving them the autonomy too, to like respecting them as a little human, that you're able to communicate those things. I love that.
Yeah, they have so much receptive language. I mean, So yeah, you want to narrate the day from the time they're born. You want to talk about what you're doing, why you're doing it, and bathe them in language. So, and then someone just asked, are these techniques applicable to a toddler of 18 months that is not understanding directions yet?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also, a lot of this is also practice for yourself. So you're practicing these habits, you're practicing so that you're setting the stage up for when that they start to develop even more, the more that language and understanding of the expectations. You're setting the expectations for you and your children, and everyone's kind of on the same page as they move along. My youngest is 18 months now, and I've been using the first then language a lot, understanding, again, talking through things like first we're going to do this, then this, and just talking through it throughout the day and practicing setting those things up for success. Even my oldest, who's 4 now, those breathing techniques, I started those really early, probably at 1 years old. I started just practicing them and modeling behaviors for them. I think it's important to start now.
And when she was saying blowing up a balloon, it was a metaphor, not really blowing balloons.
Yes,
They're
yes.
they're choking hazards. So you
Yeah, don't do
wanna
that. Yeah, thanks for the clarification.
Yeah.
10 balloons, not real ones at night, especially.
Yes, they're a choking hazard for
Good
young
point.
children. Latex balloons are very dangerous for young children.
No,
So
imaginary.
having a brother-in-law who's an ER doctor, I
Yeah.
learned these things.
Agree. I
So
don't like balloons.
okay, I think, did anyone else have more questions? I am not seeing more, but you were very thorough. Oh, yep, we got one. My 20-month-old is still occasionally nursing when he hits a full-blown tantrum. It seems only nursing comfort suckling can stop it. I've tried everything mentioned here for 20 minutes to 45 minutes, but always giving in once he starts the hitched breathing. I don't know if I totally understand that. So, do you need any more questions? Do you need to ask more questions about that?
So it sounds like the tantrums are happening, and the only way to stop them as in that moment is to start nursing. Is
Oh,
that?
right. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, I think you're right. That's what it is. Yeah.
So yeah, I think obviously it's starting to become, if it's happening all the time and that's the consequence, then we need to find a new, like something new to, if every time it's happening, then it moves to nursing, then they're going to learn to have these tantrums. Your child's going to learn to have these tantrums more often to access nursing. And I don't know if, if you're still continuing to nurse, trying to only allowing the options to nurse outside of the tantrum. So working through, well, what else can we do instead to regulate? Can you try different, like maybe trying rocking instead? But it might be also that, are they trying to the behavior to just access it, or is it happening outside of it as well? Like, are tantrums happening other times, or is it only to access nursing? I guess there's a lot more questions I would have.
Yeah. And she said not sure how to stop them without nursing. So, okay. So I think you tried to answer.
Yeah, I mean, and feel free to inquire too more. And we, on our Facebook page, we're also incorporating a kind of like an Ask Me for our BCBA. So definitely look us up, and we can provide some additional Q&As type for things like that. And so, like, if there's more details or more questions, feel free to inquire with us, and we can answer them, because it does sound like this one there's more that I would want to know before fully answering everything. But that one would be a fun one to talk about.
And then earlier someone had asked, and I wrote the answer down, but they'd asked, how can I sign up for other programs like this? And so if you're a parent, if your child is enrolled in Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, and we have an email address in our system for you, you will get invited to these, so you'll want to read our emails. But we also post on social media. We're on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. and my colleague can tell me, I mean, maybe she can tell folks in the chat, if I don't know how much, I don't think we're doing a whole lot on X. But we also have a Literacy Week in Review newsletter that the Literacy Cooperative puts out every Thursday. And we always are sharing what we're offering in those. So you can sign up to get that newsletter. It's informative, brief, you can go through it real quick and just see anything for me this week and then delete it, if there isn't anything that applies to you. But that's a way, even after your child graduates from Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, to make sure you stay connected to us, because we typically, I think, end up keeping folks in our system, in our email system, but there's a chance at some point, if your child's graduated out, you're not gonna be getting our emails again. We can't guarantee it. And some people accidentally unsubscribe and then they're not gonna get it. So follow us in those different ways. And my colleague just put our website link in there and the link for signing up for our Literacy Week in Review. So that's another way to stay connected to us and to find out about these programs. We will be doing more. I have more planned and in the works. So just finalizing details for a few, but we welcome you. And as I mentioned earlier, we have recordings of a whole array of topics. So the very first one of these that we did was on stress reduction techniques, and with a music therapist and from University Hospitals and a pediatrician. So, access them at your convenience. And again, I want to be mindful of people's time, and I want to thank you again for Marnie and Mark, who's off camera, for offering this session for us today. There's so many. Yeah, we need our own reinforcement sometimes, don't we? And a wide array of tools to choose from. So, and with each presentation, you just get a slightly different understanding or, insight. So, it's valuable. We're happy to be able to offer this to families. So thanks so much.